Hello, good morning all. My name is Tamara Zejak. I'm senior lawyer at CMS Belgrade Law Office. CMS is a global law firm with very strong presence in energy practice. Our energy and climate change group counts more than 450 lawyers in over 40 jurisdictions, 16 of them being in the CEE region. With being a law firm with regional reach, we on a regular basis exchange our knowledge, business intelligence, and best practice examples. To that end, we gather here to talk about recent developments in our jurisdictions concerning legislation, and also to see with what challenges investors are faced with in our jurisdictions. We will also see what are how certain difficulties regarding grid connection to the high voltage and also zoning can be overcome by introducing energy sharing communities. We will cover today topics relevant for Serbia, Slovenia, North Macedonia, and Austria. I will speak today about recent developments in Serbia in renewable energy sector. We will talk about new changes to the law regarding renewables, which came into force 2 days ago on 7th of May. We are all witnesses here in Serbia that in the past 2 years interest of the investors increased in renewable energy sector. To that end, we have almost 20 gigawatts of producers who are waiting to be connected to the grid. Some of them have already been approved, but most of them, 14 or 15 gigawatts, are still waiting to be approved. The new law, changes to the law which came into force 2 days ago, also are aiming to protect the security of electricity transmission system and help better integration of variable renewable energy sources into the system. The changes introduce certain amendments in auction procedure and balancing scheme and balancing costs. We also see that substantial limitation in capacity of prosumers in prosumers facility is introduced, as well as capacity of renewable projects aiming to connect to the distribution system grid. Because we have only limited amount of time today, I will focus today only to balancing responsibility and balancing costs and also to the connection to the grid. When we speak about balancing responsibility, now guaranteed supplier is only responsible for, only assumes balancing responsibility for projects which are within incentive system, meaning projects which receive market premium of feed-in tariff, and only for the limited amount of time which is linked to the establishment of which is linked to certain period after establishment of intraday market in Serbia, or market coupling of intraday segment. For projects which are within incentive system, guaranteed supplier is no longer balancing responsible for them, and they must regulate their own balancing responsibility either by assuming their own balancing responsibility, or by transferring balancing responsibility to another entity which is balancing responsible. Regarding the costs for balancing responsibility for projects which are within incentive system, now costs include fixed and variable parts, plus there is obligation of producers to forecast in a good manner production in order to avoid payment of additional fee to the guaranteed supplier, and the amount of that fee and costs and also model of the agreement for balancing responsibility for the projects which are within incentive schemes will be regulated in more detail in bylaws which will be adopted in the following months. When we speak about connection to the grid, as mentioned earlier, we have many projects waiting to be connected, and to that end, the new law introduced new obligations and also authorization of TSO to prepare adequacy analysis study as part of the transmission system development plan, and to that end, the guaranteed supplier will include analysis whether there is sufficient balancing reserves for integration of all renewable energy projects which applied for the grid connection. If this is not the case, then the TSO may impose certain measure, which is called postponement of the transmission of the connection procedure, and this is something that is, let's say, available to the transmission system operator. What can investors do, and whether there is any shortcut to that? Yes, because the law now says that the investors are not obligated to wait the study to be approved by the energy agency, or if this measure of postponement is imposed, they do not have to wait for that. They can just offer additional capacities for balancing, and they in the form of batteries or storage or other conventional energy sources, and they can simply move forward with their projects. But we are waiting for bylaws to be adopted to see how everything will work in practice. This is all for Serbia, and thank you for your attention. And now Marija Filipovska, our partner in Skopje, will talk about developments in Skopje, and we'll talk about land conversion and land rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Tamara. Good morning to you all. First of all, thank you for deciding to spend a bit of time this morning with us. So, as Tamara said, my name is Marija Filipovska, and I'm a partner of CMS in North Macedonia. And, the more we discuss these days, the more we see that more or less we have the same issues and challenges when it comes to renewable energy in the region. I will not be able, due to the time limit, to discuss all the challenges that the investors see in North Macedonia, but I will try to be as concise as possible and maybe provide glimpse on the few matters which are, I would not say problematic, but challenging, let's say. So, yes, what we see in North Macedonia when it comes to solar and renewable energy are two main issues. And these are the connection to the grid, which was already discussed by Tamara, and I will not repeat it. I will just say, if you're an investor and you want to invest in North Macedonia, make sure to check the possibility to connection to the grid as soon as possible, so at a very early stage. And the second issue is the conversion of land. Now, the conversion of land is problematic everywhere in all countries, but in North Macedonia we have a special problem when it comes to the conversion. At this point, the law, although some of the laws recognize the possibility, in general, it is not possible to convert only one part. So you have to convert it all. So these are the two topics that I will be discussing. All other challenges I will be happy to discuss with any of you after or during. Just feel free to interrupt me. But I will take a step back now and maybe just provide few information on the market. So North Macedonia is the region with most sunny hours in Europe after Sicily. And regardless of this, we've managed not to develop a lot of big solar power plants. We see a lot of, for example, practice with regarding to roof-top solars, which will be discussed later by my colleague from Austria. But when it comes to big or, let's say, either solar or wind plants, we don't have them. And it was the case for years. We've seen that the region was developing. We've seen that Serbia, Montenegro, Bosnia were building these bigger projects, but it was not the case with Macedonia. So 2 years ago, we've got a wave of investors, and this kind of clicked with the documents that our government signed for going green. So we've got, we had a really big wave of investors, and they're still in North Macedonia. But they're facing issues, and the issues that they're facing are several. As I said, the main are the grid connection and the conversion of land, but there are things that are leading to this, and these are the ambiguity of the laws, the lack of practice, and the real incapacity of our local authorities to tackle the issue. So you have a situation in which you have a copy-pasted law, like more or less all of us have here from the European acquis. Then you have institutions and ministries that just don't know how to implement those laws. And at the end of the road, you have a municipality, because all these projects are being developed in in rural areas where you don't have a spatial plan, etc., etc. So you have a municipality, and as an investor, there is a big chance that you will end up converting the land, for example, in a municipality where there are only 2 people that are working on it. So a lot of projects are either paused or are delayed, etc., etc. So just, I'm not saying that these are problems, I'm just saying that as investors, you should be aware of them. So the conversion of land, so when it comes to the grid, I will not say much more. Our law at this point does not provide these possibilities that I see that you have now. I do hope that we will have the capacity to change that. The conversion of land itself is, time-consuming. In practice, it may take up to 36 months because it is a part of a passing of a spatial plan. And also, B, it is a very formal and very robust procedure. And C, as I said, and I will not repeat myself, regardless of the fact that it goes through some ministries, at the end you end up with the municipality. So, I will not, you have all the details, more or less, that you may need. It is a part of the procedure for passing of a spatial plan, and I will not discuss them, just feel free to read them. I would only want to impose one more matter, which is important, at least to me as a lawyer, and I would say it is a bigger issue, and this is the inability in practice to convert the entire land, as I mentioned a few minutes ago. And why is this an issue? First of all, it imposes a lot of much more expenses for the investors. So instead of having costs for only converting one part of the land, you're converting the entire land. Second, in 20 or 30 or 40 years from now, when the project is done, the country will be left with a lot of rural areas that are land that is basically converted. And three, the procedure itself is very problematic. So just to wrap it up, if you're an investor, take care of two things. First, try to see whether the grid connection is possible, and B, just get in touch with the local municipalities at an earlier level. So a very transparent contact, but just make sure to just have the idea of whether it will be possible to convert the land due to practical reasons. At this point, as we're speaking now, we have some changes of the energy laws. Unfortunately, none of them reflect. As I learned a few days ago, none of them reflect the issues that we just discussed. They're reflecting some other aspects, and I really hope that the government and that our municipalities will try to communicate with the investors more and make sure that the laws are changes in accordance with the issues and the practice that we see. So that's all for North Macedonia. I will now introduce my dear colleague Gregor from Austria, and he will be discussing the rooftop solar. Gregor, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone, also from my side. My name is Georg Gutfleisch. I'm an attorney at law at the CMS Vienna office, and I'm happy to provide a brief overview of not only one of my favorite topics, but also an increasingly important topic we see at our energy practice in Austria, in Vienna. It's about rooftop solar and energy sharing via energy communities in Austria. In order to do so, I will just give you a quick recap on the current status of solar energy in Europe, some numbers to get the general idea of the importance of the topic, and then I will discuss three energy sharing structures that have been implemented in Austria since 2017 and most recently in 2021. And which we are gaining more and more experience also from an legal implementation side. And then I will briefly try to give you some ideas on the opportunities and possibilities that come with these legal developments. So to get started, solar energy is one of the key aspects of the European Commission that has been determined by the European Commission for the Europeans EU power plan, and there is also part of that is the EU solar energy and a rooftop initiative. This rooftop initiative by the European Commission basically states that over time there is going to be a legal obligation of new developments to have rooftop solar plants on top. So first residential commercial buildings, then also residential buildings. And we're seeing in Austria that this is already the case now. So in the Austrian state laws, in Vienna, for example, there's an obligation for new residential buildings to have solar PV plants on the roof. And with this legal obligation, there of course also come legal challenges and difficulties to avoid or to overcome, which is not that problematic if you know how to do it, and that's why we are here. So from the numbers, solar energy is one of the fastest growing renewable energy source in Europe. So I've just picked up some numbers from the 2021 EurObsev'ER study. In From a national perspective, there is still room to grow, as I think, especially in the CE and SEE region, but also Austria is not on the top of the list, so we all have our homework. But I'm sure that when time comes, difficulties will be overcome and solutions will be found. So now, coming to the three energy sharing structures that are implemented in Austria, we'll start with the smaller one and increase to the national energy sharing concept in Austria. The first is the self-consumption rooftop project in residential buildings that's been introduced in 2017. It basically means that if you have a PV plant on a residential buildings with more residents, you can locally share the produced energy and allocate it directly to the residents. This is organized by civil law contracts, so there is going to be the owner of the building or the condominium owners erecting the PV plants on the rooftop, or some of them, and then the residents can participate and you self-consume the energy that's directly produced on the roof of their building. When it comes to grid access, zoning, and transportation costs, this is, of course, the easiest one to solve, because there are no grid connection costs if the energy is shared directly in the building. Any excess energy is fed into the grid as an excess feed-in concept, and in Austria we have not yet seen any problems with grid access or grid capacity when it comes to residential buildings and PV plants, because these are usually rather small projects that not make a difference in the small scale, but altogether there is a lot of potential here. Getting a bit bigger now, there is the renewable energy community in Austria that's introduced in 2021. It basically means that you can produce and share and self-consume the energy not only within one building, but within the proximity of the building or the PV plant, using only the low and medium voltage grid. Renewable energy communities are organized as separate legal entities, like an association. It can also be a limited liability company or a stock corporation, but this would be a bit of an overkill. And from a commercial perspective, it's important to note that the members of the renewable energy communities are limited to individuals and small and medium-sized enterprises that are not specialized in the energy production business, and there must also be some community aspect. From grid access, experience shows that we have not yet had major difficulties to get grid access for PV plants that are organized in energy communities in Austria. There are also not these big greenfield projects, and there are also reductions for grid and transportation costs. So there is an incentive to organize in an energy community in Austria. And the biggest structure is basically a citizen energy community. To cut it short, because I'm already over time, only the differences here, also big corporations can participate, but they must not take a leading role. And for the grid access and zoning requirements, there are no reductions in price. Depending on the size of the PV plant, there might also be discussions regarding grid access and capacity. But I'm sure if you take that early on, there will be a solution. And to conclude the presentation, here we've tried to collect some areas of application and opportunities in which these three concepts can be applied in practice. The first, of course, is the easy one. It's the compliance with legal requirements. So if there is a legal obligation to have a rooftop PV plant, why not build it in the realm of an energy community? It might be a solution to storage capacities, because you can share energy peer-to-peer. For local consumption, you can build EV charging stations. This would be an opportunity here. and most important also ESG considerations, and of course when it comes to financing, rooftop PV and energy communities can contribute your chances to get a green loan or a green financing from the bank, and there also save some costs. So thank you very much. Now I give the floor.
Thank you, Georg, for this interesting presentation. Good morning to you all. My name is Dunja Andl, and I'm partner at CMS Slovenia. While rooftop photovoltaics is a very hot topic also in Slovenia, my presentation will wrap up this panel with a short overview of current status of the renewable energy sources market in Slovenia and give you a brief insight into the new sectoral legislation being adopted. According to the latest published report on the state of energy sectors in Slovenia, end of 2021, the share of electricity produced from renewable energy sources was 36.7%, whereby 90% of this electricity was generated by hydropower plants. The share of renewable energy sources in energy consumption was 23%, and more than 14,000 self-supply photovoltaic installations with connection capacity of 195 megawatts were in operation. It is anticipated that the numbers for 2022 will be the same. These numbers, however, put Slovenia at the tail of EU member states when considering the cumulative solar photovoltaic capacity and the share of renewable energy sources in energy consumption. Recently, a draft of integrated national energy and climate plan was put in public discussion. This new plan will increase the non-ambitious 25% of a share in energy consumption to at least 35, more likely to 40, also in order to meet the goals from the European Green Deal. It is expected that the energy consumption in Slovenia will at least double by 2050. To meet this growing electricity consumption needs and among ambitious goals set by the European Green Deal in order to enable the green transition, it will need a leapfrog growth in solar and wind power capacity in Slovenia, and also some other energy generating sources. Therefore, urgently, at least following measures are required: shortening of zoning and permitting procedures, and acceleration into investment into electricity grid. Obstacles to achieve this are well known and common to all countries in this region. For example, positioning of an energy generating plant may not be feasible in terms of land use and environmental protection regimes, especially if we consider that around 70% of Slovenia is covered with forest. Slovenia has also a strong civil initiative and NGO activity, which together with understaffed and yes, sometimes underqualified decision makers extend the periods for obtainment of permits, connection consents, and environmental assessments over the statutory prescribed deadlines. Due to capacity limitation of our electricity grid, many areas are not suitable for connecting electricity generation facilities, especially large scale. However, it has to be also mentioned that ELES, Slovenia operator of high voltage electricity power transmission system, and SODO, our distribution system operator, have recently identified at least 89 of connection points where large-scale photovoltaic farms can be connected. Here we can see a map of these potential connection points and see that they're well placed all over. Now, some of the above-mentioned obstacles are being also addressed with the new law. Act on the positioning of installation for the production of electricity from renewable energy is currently in the initial state of legislative procedure. The new law will introduce, among others, mandatory installation of photovoltaic installation in case of new construction and reconstruction of building with a roof surface area of at least 2,000 square meters. Installation of photovoltaics will be mandatory also for all existing buildings, with a roof surface area of 1,700 square meters and hardened parking areas of the same surface area. However, after a transition period, which is yet to be set and will be between 2 and 10 years. New technologies and approaches often don't find current legislation as an appropriate legal framework for development. Therefore, the new law introduces so-called regulatory sandboxes, where innovative projects in the field of renewable energy sources will be able to obtain a special government decision allowing derogation from existing rules, such as building and zoning regulation, for example. The decision will be time-barred and will specify precise conditions and the scope of derogation. Dual or multiple use of the land is being introduced, allowing placing of electricity generation facilities from solar and wind in areas where, due to intended use of land, this is currently not allowed. Removal of this restriction that prevent use and utilization of the same space for different purposes shall, for example, allow photovoltaics on noise barriers on the motorways or solar power plants as hail protection roofs over fields, or let's at least hope so. The new law also foresees, time is up, so I will try to wrap it up quickly. The new law also foresees that mandatory positioning of photovoltaic installation in the process of adoption of a state or municipal spatial plan, and for me, the most welcome, the option, not the obligation, but the option of a state or municipality to establish an easement or a building right free of charge on their land will be possible. I strongly believe that Slovenia is and will be an interesting place for investment in renewable energy sources, and it will meet its renewable energy targets in the future. The much needed leapfrog growth in solar and wind power capacity is, in my opinion, achievable. However, only by strengthening investment in our electricity grid, further increase of self-supply energy communities, development of efficient electricity vehicle charging station, investments and increase of technologies in field of energy storage solution, co-use, or let it say, smarter use of land in order to untap the potential of already derogated space such as roads and landfills. And last but not least, by Slovenia continuing to be innovative and open for new technologies. I hope that the insight shared today with you by me and my colleagues will spark some new or encourage some smart investments in the future in this region. CMS is here to support you with the challenges when you're taking this smart investment. Thank you for your attention, and the conference will now continue with the panel 5. Thank you very much.